Looks like everybody's ready. Genesis chapter 41. At the end, we read that during the previous lesson. Today it's lesson 35. We'll see how Joseph's brothers come to Egypt and what he does with them. We don't get the full story. We'll see the end of it in the next lesson. Okay. But we know some things from yesterday. We had read yesterday that Joseph was made just under Pharaoh in Egypt. He rode in the second chariot. He was given the king's ring, a gold necklace placed around his neck, signifying his importance. He was given kingly clothes. Okay. Pharaoh also gave to him a wife. Okay. Asenath. Asenath. We see there. And she was the daughter of Potiphera, the priest of On. So she would have been a daughter of an ungodly priest. That might raise some questions in our mind. All right? Why would an ungodly, or the child of an ungodly, why would Joseph marry the daughter of an ungodly priest? Well, the king gave her to him. That's one good reason why. But it's probably safe to say Joseph prayed to God, and God gave him knowledge, the peace that this was to be his wife. We don't know all what went on there. We don't know what he knew or exactly what her personality was like or what she knew or believed. But we probably can assume that through the godly example of Joseph as her husband, she too came to the knowledge and understanding of who God was and of Jesus as her Savior. No proof of that, but we can probably make a good assumption of that. While in Egypt, Joseph has two sons. What's the name of the first son? His name is in verse 51 there of chapter 46. What's the first son's name? Colin? Manasseh. And if we look at verse 51, he says, "For God, said he, hath made me forget all my toil and all my father's house." So what did Joseph forget? He named him Manasseh because God caused me to... Amber? Yeah, forget the problems, the difficulties that he had. Okay, forget his afflictions, the troubles. Okay, God is helping him to forget those things. They can't ever probably be, you can't erase a memory, but God is helping him to forget those things. Next, he has another son, and the second son he names what? What's the second son? Micah. Ephraim, and in verse 52, why does he name him Ephraim? What's the meaning? Read right from there. Jaden?
For God has caused me to be fruitful in the land.
In what land? Keep reading.
Of my affliction.
What's the land of Jacob's or Joseph's affliction? What land is his affliction? Brody? Egypt. But God has caused me to be fruitful. In other words, God has blessed me. Here in this land of my affliction, God has not forgotten me. He has not forsaken me. Okay? But yet God is working and making him fruitful and grow here in this land of his affliction. In other words, by saying that, he's also saying, I know this isn't my permanent place. I need to get back to Canaan. Okay? And so then we read last time about the 7 years of plenty. They were rich, the storehouses were filled with grain, and now the famine comes. Okay? Famine comes, there was a dearth over all the land. No one could grow very much or hardly any. Maybe an almond tree or a fig tree could grow a couple pieces of fruit, but this wasn't the rich harvests of grain that were taken in before. There was nothing that really probably grew very well. And we see already that the people are coming into Egypt from other countries to buy from Joseph. One thing that we had talked about, that they are already doing this in the second year of the famine. So if they've been storing up so much, a fifth of 1 year's harvest, you would think if they did that for each of the 7 years, they could at least make it 3 or 4 years. but they can't. Probably one good lesson for us there is they were used to having lots of stuff, just like we talked about in our devotions with contentment. We are used to having lots of stuff. We're used to having probably a pretty nice meal set before us at the table. Okay? And if all of a sudden that were to change, all of a sudden you went home tonight and mom and dad said, sorry, we've got hardly any money left in the bank account for food. All we can offer tonight, here is this piece of bread. We'll put a little jelly on it or a little butter, and that's about it. Hey, here's a glass of water. No, we don't have any milk. How would you feel about that? Well, we'd all be, come on, there's got to be more. Well, it's probably the case in Egypt that the people were used to their comfortable lives, their nice lives. And all of a sudden when the famine hit, they didn't take it seriously enough, or they didn't all of a sudden learn that I need to narrow down my eating, I need to narrow down all of my habits, the amount I give to my animals. And they probably continued to live a very high lifestyle until all of a sudden things really start running out. Okay? And we'll see that a little bit later on. But that might be a good lesson for us too. We live in this life, very easy life. We can have all that we want. Probably do pretty good to cut back in a lot of areas and be content in those. All right, so let's take a look at chapter 42, verse 1. Now when Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt, Jacob said unto his sons, why do ye look one upon another? And he said, behold, I have heard there is corn in Egypt. Get you down thither, and buy for us from thence, that we may live and not die. And Joseph's 10 brethren went down to buy corn in Egypt, but Benjamin, Joseph's brother, Jacob sent not with his brethren, for he said, lest peradventure mischief befall him. And the sons of Israel came to buy corn among those that came, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. So the famine didn't just affect Egypt, but it also affected the land of Canaan and probably many other surrounding countries, because we see people coming from many countries. So why does Jacob have to kind of chastise his 10 sons? Why does he have to do that? What are they doing, Colin? Well, this is Jacob, though. He's at home, right, at the beginning of chapter 42, and he hollers at his sons because they're out of corn, and he says, why do you look upon it? Why do you just sit here looking at each other? Why don't you get down to Egypt and go buy some corn? Why were those brothers just sitting around? Why didn't they want to go to Egypt? Amber? They knew where Joseph was. They didn't want to face their memories. Now, they didn't know that they would go down there and see Joseph. Not at all. They didn't know if he was alive or still there. He could have been passed on somewhere else. But that's where they sold him into. That's where those Ishmaelites are going, and it would bring back those memories. So Jacob has to kind of chastise them, push them along. Come on, get moving. Go get some corn. But it's their conscience, right? We know that. Each of you, when you sin, when I sin, my conscience bothers me. Your conscience bothers you, hopefully. And we don't want to, if we said something mean to a person, we don't want to go by them in the next 5 minutes. If we did something that was wrong, we don't want to go do something with that person. We're embarrassed. Our conscience pricks us. And so we don't want to deal with it. Well, that's what these brothers were like here, why they didn't want to go. But finally they must go because fathers told them to, and they know they can't tell him the reason why they don't want to go. So they head down, except for one brother. Which brother is left behind? Amber? Benjamin. Why is Jacob not willing to send Benjamin? Kenton? Okay. What else does Jacob maybe know about his other 10 sons? Colin?
They might not like Benjamin.
Maybe they might not like him because he plays favorites. We've seen the foolishness of that. Another reason might be this. Do you remember what kind of report Joseph brought back to his father about what people said about his sons? about what people thought about his sons, about the activities of his sons? What kind of report was it? Yeah, they were wicked. They were mean. They were unkind. Maybe Jacob, not being foolish, says, well, if I send these 10 down with my youngest son Benjamin, maybe they're going to stop at the tavern along the way and get drunk. Maybe they're going to spend all their money gambling it along the way. Maybe they'll do other foolish things along the way. Do I trust them with my youngest son? Now, he's not very young at this time. He's got to be probably almost 20 years old. But he's not going to let him go because he knows that these rest of his sons aren't living godly lives, or very evidently very godly lives at all. Okay? So he doesn't want to send them, but they have to go. So they go and they arrive here in Egypt. Okay? And verse 6, and Joseph was the governor over the land, and he it was that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth. And Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them, but made himself strange unto them, and spake roughly unto them. And he said unto them, Whence come ye? And they said, From the land of Canaan to buy food. And Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew him not him. And Joseph remembered the dreams which he dreamed of them, and he said unto them, Ye are spies, to see the nakedness of the land ye are come. And they said unto him, Nay, my lord, but to buy food are thy servants come. We are all one man's sons, we are true men. Thy servants are no spies. And he said unto them, Nay, but to see the nakedness of the land ye are come. And they said, Thy servants are 12 brethren, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is not. And Joseph said unto them, That is it that I spake unto you, saying, Ye are spies. Hereby ye shall be proved. By the life of Pharaoh ye shall not go forth hence, except your youngest brother come hither. Send one of you, and let him fetch your brother, and ye shall be kept in prison, that your words may be proved, whether there be any truth in them. Or else, by the life of Pharaoh, surely ye are spies. And he put them all together into ward 3 days. And Joseph said unto them the third day, This do and live, for I fear God. If ye be true men, let one of your brethren be bound in the house of your prison. Go ye, carry corn for the famine of your houses, but bring your youngest brother unto me. So shall your words be verified, and ye shall not die. And they did so. Keep going here. And they said one to another, We are verily guilty concerning our brother. So now they are just talking amongst each other, but they're talking in their Hebrew tongue. In that we saw the anguish of his soul when he besought us, and we would not hear. Therefore is this distress come upon us. And Reuben answered them, saying, Spake I not unto you, saying, Do not sin against the child, and ye would not hear? Therefore, behold, also his blood is required. And they knew not that Joseph understood them, for he spake unto them by an interpreter. And he turned himself about from them, and wept, and returned to them again, and communed with them, and took from them Simeon, and bound him before their eyes. So a few things happen here. So the brothers come in, they get to the place, what it looked like we don't know, but you can imagine a large room, a large storehouse, and there was probably the seat of Joseph, and he could watch over all the people and see the comings and goings, and hand out to each what they needed. Had his servants and workers helping him out, filling the sacks with grain and whatever not. And then all of a sudden comes his brothers, these 10 dusty, rough-looking Hebrews. And you can imagine immediately the heart rate, the blood pressure of Joseph immediately goes up. And what's in his mind? And he realizes, well, they won't recognize him. Probably needs to take a minute to calm himself down, but again, we can only imagine what thoughts are racing through his head. Here they are. Here they are. You know, we might ask ourselves this question. When Joseph became ruler in the land, why didn't he send a messenger back to his father? When he became an important man, he was no longer under the threat of prison. Why didn't he send a messenger back to tell his father, I'm alive, Father. I'm down here in Egypt. I'm a ruler. Any good theories? You had your hand raised, Brody. Didn't want his brothers to get in trouble. Amber? Yeah, he didn't know that. No, he could assume that they didn't tell the truth. Okay. Well, there's a reason why. Joseph needs to test them. He needs to see. He needs to find out. We were just talking about this last night in Bible study. Okay. He needs to see that his brothers are sorry for their sin. He needs to see their remorse. He's ready to forgive his brothers because he knows that this is all part of God's plan, but he needs to see their remorse. Okay? He needs to see that they're sorrowful for their sins. And so he doesn't go to them and tell them he's alive. Instead, he says, no. Let's take a look and see just how sorry they are. Have they changed their ways? If they have, they're no longer living in sin, okay, then he can be reconciled to them. They can be given forgiveness. So he sees them coming in. And they come in, and he probably meanders his way over to them, trying to make it look as non-obvious as possible. And he sees them. Who are you? Where are you from? Well, we're from Canaan, and we're Hebrews, and we're here for some grain. And he accuses them of being spies. And he tells them, well, you must be spies here because the land is naked. There's nothing good here. Now is a perfect time for you to come in and look around and see what might be good for you up there in the land of Canaan to come down and attack us. Now, the brothers try to defend themselves. Notice, they say, no, we're 12 brothers. One brother is back home with father, the youngest, and one brother is not. What lie are they continuing to keep up here? What do they mean by that? One brother is not. Kenton? Yeah, he's dead. They're keeping up this lie here. They can't tell. Well, think about that. If he told this ruler who's accusing him, you see, we took our brother, we threw him in a pit, we sold him some Ishmaelites, and he's somewhere down here in Egypt, we don't know where, and we told our father that he's dead. Well, can you imagine? In their minds, the ruler for sure would have a right to accuse them of being spies now. So he doesn't. They don't tell him that. They just say he is not. Okay? What does what does Joseph do with them then for a time? Brody. 3 days they get put in prison. And there it is in prison that they have to think about it. You can imagine them talking to each other. You can imagine Joseph probably getting word back from some of the jailers. What are they saying in there? What are they talking about? How are they behaving? He wants to know about his brothers. And at the end of 3 days, he takes them out and he says, here's the deal. Here's how you can prove you're not spies. Okay. Go back to Canaan, but you're going to leave one of your brothers here as a guarantee that you will come back. He's going to stay here in prison until you come back. And when you come back, you need to bring your youngest brother. How do I know you're not lying? Bring him with. Okay. Joseph, in speaking in his rough ways with them and getting them all fired up about being spies, it was a great plan by Joseph to kind of find out, hey, they talked about my father. My youngest brother is at home with him. They're both alive. Can't wait to see them. He has one full brother, Benjamin, obviously, and he would love to see his father. So he has that news. So he's working here. Now this is also a test for his brothers, because if his brothers are just as wicked as they used to be, and they would head back to Canaan, what might they do when they get home and father sees that Simeon is gone? What could they do again? So that they didn't have to deal with this situation. What could they tell father? Tell Jacob? Amber? Could say Simeon died also along the way. He got a disease, an illness. Or an animal killed him. They could come up with, and that would solve them their problem. They wouldn't have to face their guilt. They wouldn't have to go back there. They wouldn't have to deal with this ruler. And so Joseph's testing them again. Will they do the same thing again? It was easy for them to leave me, to get rid of me. It should be just as easy for them to get rid of Simeon and just go on with their lives back in Canaan. He's testing them here. Okay? So, verses 21 and 22 are very interesting. Look at those there. So after all of this is said, and it's kind of set in place, Simeon is bound and put into prison, back into the prison. The brothers probably are having their sacks filled up with the grain by the servants, getting ready to go. they begin to talk amongst each other in verse 21. And why do they think all of these things are happening to them? Why is this happening to them, do they think? Jennifer. Yeah, they said, verily, we are verily guilty concerning our brother, meaning Joseph, and that when we saw the anguish of his soul when he besought us, we would not hear. When was that? When did they see the anguish of Joseph's soul and they would not listen to him? When was that? Colin? Probably when he was in the pit, for sure, and probably also when he was being dragged away by the Ishmaelites and he was calling out and hollering to them. And they didn't listen to him. And then Reuben sits up and says, didn't I tell you not to sin against him? You wouldn't listen to me. And now look at what you've brought upon us. They're all fighting here. They're arguing with each other. And what they don't realize is that Joseph, standing right there, understands. They're talking in the Hebrew language. And this whole time, Joseph never talked directly to them. He always talked through an interpreter so that he could keep his disguise going. And so they think, well, the master here, he can't understand a word we're saying, so we'll talk about these things. And that causes Joseph to weep. Joseph has to turn his back and he begins to cry because he sees that they are sorrowful for their sins. He sees that. Okay? So, verse 25, continuing here to the end. And then Joseph commanded to fill their sacks with corn, and to restore every man's money into his sack. In other words, if they paid $200 for the corn, not only fill it with corn, but put the $200 back on top of the sack. And give them provisions for the way. In other words, so not only fill their sacks, but give them a little bit more so they have food along the way for them and their animals. And thus did he unto them. And they laded their asses with the corn, so loaded them up and departed thence. And as one of them opened his sack to give his ass provender in the inn, so at some point along the way they stopped and he opened one of the bags of corn to give his animal some food. He espied his money. In other words, he saw it, for behold, it was in his sack's mouth. And he said unto his brother, my money is restored, and lo, it is even in my sack. And their heart failed them, and they were afraid, saying one to another, what is this that God hath done to us? So each of them finds out that they have their money. Now comes the hard part. Verse 29, and they came unto Jacob their father unto the land of Canaan, and told him all that befell unto them, saying, the man who is the Lord of the land, that's Joseph, spake roughly to us, and took us for spies of the country. And we said unto him, we are true men, we are no spies. We be 12 brethren, sons of our father. One is not, so they have to continue to lie here, right? One is not, and the youngest is to stay with our father in the land of Canaan. The man, the Lord of the country, said unto us, hereby shall I know that ye are true men. Leave one of your brethren here with me. So they're obviously telling father they have Simeon still in Egypt. And take food for the famine of your households. So he did give us food to be able to stay alive and be gone. And bring your youngest brother unto me. Then shall I know that ye are no spies, but that ye are true men. So will I deliver you your brother, and ye shall traffic in the land. And it came to pass, as they emptied their sacks, that behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when both they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. So the story is laid out in front of father. That's the deal that needs to be done if they want Simeon back is demonstrated. And now they've got this money issue too. How does that make Jacob feel? And Jacob their father said unto them, me have ye bereaved of my children. So it's your fault. He's saying, me have ye bereaved of my children. Joseph is not, and Simeon is not, and ye will take Benjamin away. All these things are against me. So he says, it's your fault. You can see his anger coming out here. Is he accusing them because he really knows what they did to Joseph? Probably not. But he knows that of their sin. He knows of how they behaved. And he's maybe accusing them. All these bad things are happening because of you. That's not a good accusation to make, but he says that here. We can see his anger. I've lost Joseph, now I've lost Simeon, and now you want to take Benjamin away? And Reuben spake unto his father, saying, slay my 2 sons, if I bring him not to thee again. Deliver him into my hand, and I will bring him to thee again. He said, my son shall not go down with you. That's Benjamin, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone. So you can see his favoritism still here. If mischief befall him by the way in which ye go, then shall ye bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. So they tell father the story. They tell all that's happened. And Jacob blames his sons for it all. Okay? He didn't. What he should have said was, God is in control of all this. It's sorrowful for me. It's difficult for me, but God is in control. And if that's what needs to happen, then that shall be done. But he didn't. Okay? So that's a good lesson for us too. We might want to be like those brothers, and we might want to be like Jacob. And well, if something bad happens to me today, it must have because yesterday I did this, and I know I shouldn't have done it. Or, oops, I just tripped and fell, and it was because I had stuck out my tongue walking past this person to make a face at him. Okay, we can't think that way. That's the way that's being thought here. But we need to know that all things are in the hand of God. We can also know that in our times of trouble and difficulties, that those things are still in the hand of God, and he watches over us. So that's what we can take from this lesson today. Okay? We'll see how, moving forward next time, in the next lesson, what happens when the brothers go back to Egypt to see Joseph the second time. Okay?